and hear us.
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, so we're ready to go.
Ooh, cool. Let me just move my phone.
Let me
And I'll
just,
start my backup recording.
I just eat one of these pecan swirls right here. Nectar of the gods.
Something like that.
I'm so hungry. It's been a long night. All right.
Turn it up a little bit on my end. All right, let's do the damn thing.
Let's do it.
What's up, nerds, and welcome back to Heroes Never Die, your one-stop spot for all things competitive Overwatch and Overwatch 2. I'm your host, Emily Drunk, and we're back. I feel like it's been forever. It's been basically 4 weeks at this point. We have a lot going on,
Mm-hmm.
and for all intents and purposes, it makes a lot more sense for us to just focus on the bigger picture stuff right now, because obviously today was a major day for Overwatch 2. We had the new patch. Invasion is upon us, which, can open up a whole can of worms in regards to like whether or not this should have been, part of the launch. We'll get into that.
We'll get there.
But obviously, this is the biggest update to Overwatch ever.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, so yeah, obviously, we've kind of had, we had a minor scheduling conflict because you were going camping or whatever, and then it's like, oh well, you want to record this week, and then we're like, nah, season 6 drops next week, so they're like, yeah, it'd probably make more sense just to hold off another week.
Yeah.
And sure enough, here we are. But anyways, just a couple of general reminders really quick before we get underway. If you guys want to reach us, you can find us over on X, not that anyone calls it that, at HMD Overwatch. Of course, you can find all our video content on YouTube and Overwatch League Network. And of course, you can join us and talk to us over on our community Discord at discord.me/OWLN show. That being said, of course, as always, I'm joined tonight by my co-host Spyder. And Spyder, man, for the longest time, you and I were kind of like waiting with bated breath for season 6 to drop. Because, both of us, while we still enjoy the game, maybe we haven't been spending as much time in. And obviously, like, with the gutting that had been going on behind the scenes, it kind of left a bitter taste in our mouth. So we both were in the mindset of, okay, we're gonna take some time. We'll wait for season 6 to drop. We'll see how we're feeling after this point. Get our taste of what the PvE is actually going to be with the current iteration that was implemented into the game with Invasion, and just kind of see where it takes us. Just because, like, obviously, we have been with the ebb and flow since Overwatch initially came out. There's been highs, there's been lows. And, we just needed to see where the chips were going to fall before, like, we like, fully decided, like, okay, like, what is our long-term commitment going to be for Overwatch 2 now that we have more of the full-fledged picture that we were, I'm not going to say initially promised, but definitely more the picture that we were expecting, at least to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
And for the most part, we were running the PvE missions earlier outside of the limited time event one, which is a separate entity in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
And we ran into a couple of problems, but we'll get into that. But
Yep.
no, I feel like tonight's episode, like, obviously we're going to be brushing over a lot of stuff that we've missed over the past month. There has been a lot of rumblings, especially on the esports side of things with the state of Overwatch League. I saw something earlier about like betting odds, and it does appear Overwatch League is likely to return in 2024. I didn't look at the actual line, but I thought that was pretty funny, just stumbling across that. But yeah, it's been 4 weeks. Obviously, we were talking a little bit, during the pre-stream stuff, but how have things been? Because like it's been quite some time.
They've been good. I mean, life comes at you fast sometimes.
Yeah.
uh, Summer's always busy for us anyway, just because of the
Mhm.
fact that I have 3 children and they like to do things. And my wife is amazing at finding things to do. So we are constantly busy. So
Mhm.
between that and Baldur's Gate 3, I don't remember like pretty much the last month, but um, it August is about the time when at least my home life starts to slow down, and like August and September, outside of my wife's birthday in September, are kind of like chill months, especially for me at work because like our
Mhm.
big thing happens in October. Uh, these next 2 months are nice for me, so I am looking forward to it. But um, like you said, I haven't played a whole lot of Overwatch just because I did finish the battle pass and then life and stuff. And then there have been an amazing like release catalog over the past month that I have. What free time I have had, I got to dive into like Remnant.
Mhm.
Obviously, Baldur's Gate 3 is the big one right now. As like a huge D&D nerd. And then we had Overwatch today. So like I was like I want to get as far into Baldur's Gate 3 as I can because I know like the next probably few days are going to be taken up by Overwatch. And I haven't made it out of Act 1. So not nearly the progress that I thought I'd make. But I'll save my thoughts for like the PvE missions. I
Mhm.
I do feel like Overwatch is in a pretty decent space right now. I haven't felt the full effects of today's patch because the only like classic Overwatch, like the only PvP Overwatch I played today was on the new Flashpoint maps, and it was no role lock. So uh, I didn't get like a true feel for it because every game in that starts out as some like nonsense, and then eventually everybody falls into like 2 tanks, 2 healers, and a DPS usually. Um, and that's just how it devolves into. So I do want to try, actually playing the new hero under regular circumstances because she seems really strong, and she seems like she's definitely more like Zenyatta flavored than like Life Weaver flavored. She is very offensive. So we'll talk about her a little bit later when we get
Mhm.
into her kit and stuff like that. But we got some stuff to talk about tonight. So pretty much anything I have to say, I can wait till we get to that bucket.
Yeah, absolutely. So, a lot of the esports stuff we're going to brush over. Obviously, the bigger news, at least with the Overwatch League recently, was the announcement that the Toronto Defiant will be hosting the Overwatch League Grand Finals this year, and that will be at the Matinee Athletic Center.
Hmm.
Obviously, tickets are available for this. And obviously, like the pre-sales already come and gone at this point, but general ticket sales are up. So we got the top 5 teams in the West region and the top 3 teams from the East competing, and they're going to get drafted into groups of 4 for the playoff format. In this case, all of which is going to be held in a double elimination bracket. So you have 2 teams from each group advancing into the grand finals bracket, which is single elimination at that point in time. Uh, and I thought this was interesting because obviously, Toronto is also kind of like one of the staple locations for the PvE missions. So,
Hmm.
when I read this, I'm just like, oh, so we're just trying to cattle all of the humans together, so maybe some of the omnics can get out alive, or maybe I don't know if the brain suckers are gonna end up going for the humans in this
Subjugators.
case in time, yeah, or whatever terminology they decide on, since they're constantly arguing over that. But pretty big prize pool in regards to the playoffs. There's $1.8 million on the line, obviously, with the grand prize being $1 million.
Hmm.
But just being there, I mean, you're guaranteed $50 million for your team, which not bad for a top 6 placements in
Not
this
terrible.
regard. But I, as you would come to expect, obviously there's an FAQ on here telling you, okay, like what can you bring? Is there an
Hmm.
age limit? Are kids able to go here? Because I know, like, for the longest time, at least with say like Call of Duty League,
Yep.
uh, my nephew would constantly ask me, like, hey, this was when Chicago had a team. Can we go to one of the events? And I was like, I don't know. Let me look into that. Sure enough, I couldn't take him. And because of that, I never ended up going to one. But for the Overwatch League, ages 6 and up.
Yeah.
Basically. Anyone
Bring
under
the whole
5,
family.
not permitted. You can basically bring the whole family. But basically, if you're 12 or under, obviously you need to be accompanied by an adult. I don't think anyone 12 or under probably listens to the podcast. So, but either way, if you're planning to go and you're making it a family ordeal, you know the gist of it at this point in time. And, obviously, if you need to know, like, oh, well, what can you actually bring into the event? You can find all that information here with the event FAQ. But this is basically September 28th through October 1st.
The only question I have is, wasn't there supposed to be, like, crowdfunding for this? Like, wasn't there supposed to be money that we paid for, like, skins and stuff to go to this? Like, wasn't that, like, the whole shtick of, like, the bundle and stuff? So did these, like, not include that? Like, because I've looked this over like 3 times, and look, I'm not gonna say I'm perfect. I could have missed it, but I don't see anything. Yeah. So is that like something we're gonna find out about? Like, what is going on? And normally, like, I would watch Plat Chat this week, but I've been busy this week. I'd like to say for work in life, but it's been Baldur's Gate. So so maybe they had some insight on it. I don't know, because they're a little more connected. But I do need to look into that a little more, because I feel like that, because, like, specifically it was like that Sojourn skin, right? It was like the owl bundles and the Sojourn skin were supposed to go to that. So I'll look into that more, and we'll find out about that. But the prize pool's not bad. Everything there, I'm glad that they laid it out beforehand. Like, that was smart of them. But
Right.
honestly, it's not anything crazy. Like, it's pretty standard stuff. So I'm curious to see how Toronto does with it. But I guess we can kind of rule out that there won't be like a home team winner this year, right? So that is off the cards.
Well, oh well. Not everyone can pull the Philadelphia. I was looking just for shits and giggles to see, okay, like, what's the price point? Because I know they have, obviously, bundle deals going in regards to, like, the passes for this. In the 4-day pass, if you want to go to, like, the event in its entirety, and granted, these are at bowl level, on the floor seats available. But a ticket is 140 Canadian, which comes out to, like, $105 USD.
Yeah.
So for a 4-day event, that's still a pretty good value.
That's a third of a BlizzCon ticket.
Yeah, I mean, and it's you get extra days out of it too.
Right,
it's just
exactly.
I'm sure they got a ton of interactive stuff too, in that regard. But yeah, like for those that haven't experienced an esports event live, as obviously like as avid esports fans, we would highly recommend it.
Yeah, for sure. It's very different. Like, you can definitely get more into it. The 2 big ones I've been to is I've been to a StarCraft Brood War LAN event, which that was way back in the day, and then obviously the World Cup when I went to BlizzCon, and they are both phenomenal events. So, I mean, this may be your last chance to see Overwatch League in its current iteration. So, if you got a passport, you can get up there, or you live in Canada and you don't need a passport, check it out for sure.
Absolutely, and obviously we've since we've been gone for a month, figure the easiest thing to do, at least for like the Overwatch League stuff, is to just kind of see where things have fallen here as of late. Seeing how teams are doing at this point in time, and honestly, not a whole lot has changed in regards to NA Atlanta since we last recorded. Their run, I guess, for like the perfect season came to a close.
Mm-hmm.
They are still maintaining the top spot in regards to NA. Florida Mayhem also have an identical record, but they're about 4 maps behind them at this point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Houston still doing fairly well. But what's interesting is, there's not a lot separating the middle of the pack. We still kind of like have our upper echelon teams. We have Atlanta, Houston, uh, and Florida.
Yep.
Boston, holding pretty steady.
Nipping at their heels.
They're not like a S or A tier team, but like they are definitely the ones at the top of that second tier in
Oh yeah.
regards to NA. But it's been interesting because for the longest time we were always following like that storyline of, okay, which of these bottom teams is A, going to be able to secure a win, and B, which one of these like gatekeeper teams are going to end up losing that sort of status for them. And come to find out, we have answers to both of them already. So Vegas Eternal still looking for the first win, not looking great. We have the Valiant have been picked up 2 wins at this point. But man, the Gladiators.
The Sadiators.
Yeah, the Sadiators have been out in full force. And man, it's just like, who could have seen this coming? They are 5-9 entering this week of Overwatch League. It's just like, there were such high expectations for this team. Like kind of going in and like, I would say at the start of the season, I would not have pegged them like a top 3, but to see where they have kind of like fallen to at this point in time has been one of the biggest surprises in regards to like the entirety of the Overwatch League, not just NA, but just across the globe at this point.
Yeah, it's been rough for the Gladiators. They since they dropped Dante, they just have not looked like they are on the same page. And this meta right now, at least what it was prior to the patch and the time off that we're currently in the middle of, was so like team focused. Like since it was a dive meta, just other teams were exploiting the shit out of them. Like their dives were horrible. And when you think about it, you're like, oh man, when I think of a Winston, who would I rather want, Dante or Marvel? You'd be like, oh, Marvel would be the better. I don't know. I mean, Dante clearly had something else going on there because he was, he may not have been the best mechanical Winston, but they were at least on the same page with him. So I don't know if it's like a language barrier or it's just a teamwork thing. Like, obviously, we know a lot of like the behind the scenes stuff for them isn't great. We knew that since the beginning of the season, and I'm sure that's only deteriorated because as you lose, things just get worse and worse. But it's disappointing to see because, like you said, we had higher hopes for them, and they just haven't performed. I will say, like you mentioned, Vegas, since they made their mid-season swap, have at least looked competitive. Like they're all playing on ping pretty much, and weird coaching decisions aside, like they could have easily won that game against Valiant, but for some reason they pulled Knife out. Like Knife has been carrying that team. Like he's been carrying that team so much that people are like, I want Knife as MVP, and everybody's like, okay, hold up. Like you can't have a team that hasn't won a game get MVP. Oh no, my camera kind of freaked out for a second, but I think I'm all right.
You're good.
So they do look better. Valiant look a little better too, but still bottom of the barrel. Like when I say better, it's versus like the dog pile of shit that they looked like before. But other than that, like we got London. London is looking better now that they have kind of realized that like, hey, we were kind of a one trick team. Maybe we should just stick to that. And since they've gone back to that, they've looked better. Shock still struggling. Like Shock is actually I hate to say it, Shock is like my shocking placement right now because obviously they have a massive amount of talent on that team, not just proper, just everybody on that team should be able to do much better than 500, and that's currently where they're at. So in terms of the West, that's like my dark horse is like why are Shock one game behind are one game in front of NYXL, who NYXL on the other hand have also been steadily getting better. So it's interesting to see like the bottom teams um, pushing up while the top teams are actually starting to crumble a little bit. So we are getting more of that cross pollination in the middle. Um, so it's been interesting to see the last couple of weeks. And with all that said, none of that matters now because we are on a completely different patch with a new hero, a completely new game mode into the mix, which, from what I've played today, which I'm sure has no bearing on pro play and how they will play it, is chaotic as shit. Like, it's basically control but worse, like in terms of chaos. So my biggest problem with the new game mode, and I'll save this for when we get into the thoughts, but like my biggest problem with it is I never knew where they were coming from. Like literally, like our whole team was like, okay, we're gonna cover all the exits on this side, and whoever sees one, ping, and then we will all migrate there. And that could just be like a time thing. Like we just don't know yet, like where the spawns are. So we'll see. But yeah, I don't want to talk too much more about it because, like I said, everything is changing. The last thing I'll say is Dallas feels back, baby. Like we got to see Hanbin Junker Queen, and even though they lost to the Spark, and that was their first loss of this stage, that match was a banker, and like that match was won by inches by the Spark. So Hanbin getting to play the Junker Queen is always a treat, and he looked phenomenal on it. Soul Inferno is still like kind of all over the place, even though they've only lost one game, and that was to the Fuel. They still look a little shaky, but they have been kind of improving, and they can still pop off. Soul Dynasty actually has been looking better this stage as well, but the Solar Coaster is still in full effect. Like you never know which one's going to show up.
Yeah, I'm glad that they got Vindame back.
Yeah,
that was one of the recent acquisitions in our off weeks. And obviously like Shock had their fair share of problems. And when you're talking about like player movement, maybe it's not always going to be a perfect fit. Not everything is going to fit like a glove. So it was one of the rare occurrences outside of say Striker multiple times of a player returning back to their former team. Probably, actually, it might be one of the few times it's happened outside of Striker. Now that I think about it, in all these years, which is pretty funny to think about. So to see him like fall back to the Soul Dynasty, obviously a very welcome change. Obviously, it made me feel a lot better as a Dynasty fan. But yeah, it's still, I feel like as a Dynasty fan, like. It's like every season we go through these growing pains, like I feel like I can never have I can't even be in a position where I can have a false sense of security with this team.
Not at all.
Which, I guess isn't the worst thing, but it's also one of the scenes where it's like, oh man, like when there are highs, they're great. But the lows, it's just like, you don't know how far the dip is going to be, and it's just a scary thing. I want to get back to the top, so I feel like we're getting somewhere before the eventual downfall, which is sure to happen, just because, like, the East is so kind of all over the place. Let's be real. Regardless of how many miscommunications there may be with the Infernal, at times they've still been pretty cohesive throughout the entirety of the season, which again kind of a weird ordeal, but the East has just kind of been a free-for-all with the inclusion of all these contenders teams. It seemed like how they got integrated into the league, and obviously with the West and the East, things are very different this year because of that too. And obviously some of that stems from the fact that Chengdu Hunters didn't return to the league this season. But like even with just the schedule structure, very different too, because like we don't have knockouts in the West region. We only have that in the East, and that's going both throughout August and September before we land into the play-ins for both regions. Over the course of September, in that case as well.
Yep.
But yeah, it's still been an exciting season though to see like, okay, well, how are these teams going to fare? Like, what is going to happen when certain teams get poached when there's a constant like rebuild cycle, and yeah, we've kind of seen that play out as well. But yeah, I am glad to see Dallas Fuel looking a little better. But again, we're in a new meta. We're gonna see where the chips fall in this case.
Yep.
But it's a great opportunity for these teams who have kind of just been middle of the pack to potentially separate themselves and put themselves in a better position to get higher seed and enter in the playoff picture, which is right around the corner. So, things are definitely going to be heating up, and it's not just the power of the sun in this case.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how things play out in the East. I I'd still hate to say it, but as much as I love the Fuel and I want to be like the Fuel can take it, they can do it, which they can. I still don't think any of the East teams are better than some of the top tier West teams, at least
Mm-hmm.
in the past. Like this new patch, I may change things by time we record next, because I think when we record next, I actually don't think we'll have games yet. I think they'll start when we record next, right? So because they take this week and next week off, right? So um, yeah, so we'll see how the new hero shakes things up. The balance patch shakes things up, because they did hit a lot of the meta heroes with the balance patch, and they buffed Orisa with the expression of, yeah, Orisa's just going to be that character that stands there and says, "Oh, you want to dive? Nah, that ain't happening."
Yeah, I'll be honest. I haven't even looked at the balance changes, so when
Well,
I read them, that'll be the first time I look at them.
when we go through them in, what, 5 minutes, because we'll talk about our next thing real quick, and then we'll get to the balance changes.
Yeah, and there are a lot from what I was hearing.
There are,
Okay,
indeed.
so outside of that, obviously a lot of stuff happening here for Overwatch 2. We
Mhm.
had the new animated short for Sojourn that we were promised a long time ago, which is Call-In. And something that they did differently this time around is they had the premiere within the game client,
Yep.
and then they eventually did upload it to YouTube.
Hmm.
Let's see, when did they actually upload this? Because that was the other thing I
Monday.
was curious about. So yeah, so a little bit of difference there. Yeah, 3 days ago.
Yeah.
Now, since I hadn't really logged in recently until today, I did not catch the in-game cinematic
Hmm.
for this. But I thought it was interesting that they went that route as opposed to just doing the YouTube premiere, which we've kind of all been accustomed to at this point in time.
Yeah.
Um, but again, it's always good for them to implement more stuff within the game, and that also extends to lore, not just with this, but also with some of the PvE stuff that we'll be talking about, which was like one of my big questions, kind of like with the PvE, which also stems from one of the games that you still play that I used to play, which would drive me up the fucking wall with the lore.
Yep.
With how they handled it. So I'm always appreciative of it when it's just like, okay, we're gonna have a more central location. They're expanded on it. Okay, now we got the cinematic premiere and in game. That's great. A lot of people are gonna be tuning into it, so you can get more eyes on a product. Obviously, too, like we don't have this in the show notes, but we also have Overwatch 2 in Steam.
Yep.
Has that officially happened, or is that still like a
Yeah,
work in progress?
it's
Okay.
last I checked, I haven't heard any negative about it, but I as
Mhm.
far as I know, it launched today. So
Okay.
I haven't heard anybody say it hasn't. So I haven't logged
Right.
into Steam today, so
Yeah,
I
me
don't know.
neither.
I
Yeah, I
I
just
will.
remember. I just remember like that was one of the things that they'd been talking about a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh yeah, that was the thing.
Yeah. I will say that this is like my tinfoil hat theory, but I think the reason they put the Sojourn cinematic in game was as an early test for the cinematics on PvE, to see how the game can handle people watching it in there. Like I obviously I'm sure they did
Okay.
tests and stuff internally, but you always want to get the like new tech out to as many people as possible, in a controlled environment. And if people were logging in today and the video player was crapping out and they didn't get to see the intro or outro videos, people would have been a lot more mad. Where, if they had a problem with the Sojourn video, they'd be like, the Sojourn video is not working. I guess I'll just wait a little bit. Like, it's a much more like low key place to test out that kind of tech because while I'm not sure that it's one to one, I can tell that the players are similar based on how they ramped up because I don't know if you noticed, but the in-game cutscenes and the like pre-mission and post-mission cutscenes always start out as a really bad quality and then ramped up to like true quality. And the Sojourn cinematic did the same thing when I watched it because I did watch it in-game first, and that's my theory on it. And I agree. Like I think it's good to put it in the game. I think they're finally starting to catch up with other games. I mean, Fortnite has had concerts in game.
Mm-hmm.
Like you could watch Star Wars in the game at one point. Like, so, you know, adding more stuff into the game is always welcome. So, to the short itself, it's all right. Like it's you can clearly tell, like, unlike Dragons and like the Bastion short where they're like perfect standalone like shorts, this is clearly like invasion's coming.
Yeah,
Like
100%.
100%. Like you don't learn anything new other than, Sojourn did have a brief like vigilante stint, even though she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. And you get like little bits here and there, but overall it's like nothing groundbreaking. It's literally like, oh, Sojourn has, a command center in her living room kind of thing. Like that's it. Like, so well, the animation was top notch. Like, everything about it was good. It's just, I don't even know if it's necessary. Like, if you read some of the lore stuff in game, that makes a little more sense because like the agent the um in the short that she's talking to does send her an email in the game, and you can read that, and that kind of like plays off the short a little bit, but beyond that, like, it doesn't matter. So animation great, like everything's great. Not one of my favorites, but it did the job of hyping up Invasion when they needed to hype Invasion up. So I'll let that pass. But I don't think it's going to be something we look back on 7 years later and we're like, oh man, Dragons is still amazing. We'll watch the Sojourn when we want to like fall asleep. So
Yeah, we're basically only gonna be rewatching call in for Murphy.
Murphy. Yep.
In this case, who was the star of the show, that being Sojourn Stog in this case. I think the thing that I appreciated the most, which was a very like subtle thing with Sojourn in this one, was she's going out in the morning to get her cup of Joe, and of course there's an Omnic barista, working the coffee stand, and not a word is exchanged from the Omnic, and the Omnic is just gonna give her free coffee because of the work that she does for the community and whatnot.
Yep.
And Sojourn wants to pay, so instead of just outright paying for it, she just puts that money into the tip jar directly, which was just a great touch. I love seeing things like that. But yeah, for the most part, like, I wouldn't say I was blown away by the animated short. Obviously, it is just a tie-in for Invasion, so it made sense. So, of course, you have, the big cliffhanger at the end with, all of the drop ships coming into, Toronto, in the one road of Canada. And, you have that moment where, the agent is just questioning her about, like, oh, well, asking about her whereabouts, the night before. Because, kind of got roughed up a little bit because, walked into a little bit of trouble that they weren't expecting, and lo and behold, there's just this mystery hero, for lack of a better term, who comes in to fucking save this guy's ass. And sure enough, he's kind of got a sling on. He's questioning Sojourn, and she's just brushing it off. And the next thing you know, the whole living room is just an armory,
Yep, exactly.
which was great. And the whole time, you're hearing like these comms going on, and obviously like there is a ground team that Sojourn is working with in Toronto for New Queen Street. And the whole time the agent is just like trying to figure out like whether or not he's gonna bring Sojourn in for her vigilante justice.
Yep.
And of course, eventually, he does give in and helps her in this case. But yeah, it's just like, the only other thing that I really laughed at was, when the agent does arrive to Sojourn's house, and he's like greeting Murphy, and Murphy just immediately rolls over, and Sojourn makes just a comment of like, "Oh, that's weird. Like normally he's a good judge of character."
Yep.
Because he's very very welcoming to the agent, even though Sojourn knew, like, all right, it's not always going to be good news when the agent is actually, doing house calls in this case.
Yeah, you could definitely tell like she knew he was coming because she asked for 2 cups of coffee when she's there, and the guy like the barista kind of looks at her like, wait, why 2? And she's like, just 2. So she has that ready. It's like, so she knew they were coming. She does spot like the guy on the roof. Because like she kind of gives him like the nod, and then later on like she's like, all right, I need you guys to do this, I need you to do this, and the guy on the roof's like, who the hell are you, like what, how did you get this thing? And the other guy's like, no, listen to her, she knows what she's doing. So I did like that, like the change of power like super fast. Like I said, there were some cool stuff there, but obviously the invasion is the front and center of this whole event.
Yeah, absolutely. I do find it interesting. I have my browser in dark mode, but then it doesn't actually change the patch note screen, so it's still bright as shit. What the hell? Why does it do that?
Yeah, I'll.
What is going on?
I have it up on the stream too, and it is.
Oh,
it is bright.
That's weird because the top is blue, but then when I scroll down a bit, then it goes gray. That makes perfect sense in no world ever. But nothing makes sense because we're just getting invaded by the null sector at this point in time. But obviously, we had a new patch that dropped today on Thursday, August 10th. This was the Season 6 patch, which was Invasion. Obviously, a very big patch in regards to Overwatch, the biggest one to date since the game came out. And yeah, maybe we should have gotten this at Overwatch 2 launch. So we would have maybe not had the, whole Overwatch 1.1 joke, things like that. But here we are.
Here we are.
It is what it is. I'm not gonna make any excuses. I'm not gonna just brush it under the rug. It's been some time.
Yep.
So let's see where things take us. So as I mentioned, number of balance changes. I have not looked at the patch notes, so I have no idea what the hell they did, other than the fact that I pretty much knew like there's no way 76 is gonna keep running these streets.
No,
because,
he got the nerf.
Yeah,
he's still decent, but yeah, he's not as oppressive as he was, sadly.
All right, so we'll go over the balance changes, and then I'll kind of circle back to some of the other stuff that happened, because there is quite a bit here. So starting with the tanks, we had Diva, who had her booster cooldown reduced from 4 to 3.5 seconds, and her eject mech pilot is now damage immune for 0.4 seconds while ejected. So you can't
no more
just get
post bombing.
Yeah, can't get that quick snipe in on that front. Doomfist Seismic Slam cooldown reduced 7 to 6 seconds. And the Power Block now reduces damage from stuck projectiles. Orisa Augmented Fusion Driver damage fall-off range was increased from 15 to 20 meters. Fortify Health bonus increase from 75 to 125. Man, they touched literally everyone on here. Interesting.
Almost,
yeah. Ramatra, block in his Nemesis form, now reduces damage from stuck projectiles. Alt cost for annihilation increased by 12%. And also reduces damage from stuck projectiles. Obviously, we'll talk more about that. Sigma base movement ground deceleration increase to match standard heroes movement.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, Winston with the Tesla Cannon, primarily looking at the second fire here. Charge time reduced from 1.2 to 1 second. And also the recovery time increased from 0.5 to 0.75 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so basically, just about everyone, except, Rhine and Junker Queen
And Zarya.
and Zarya
Yep.
being the odd men and women out in this case. But, for the most part, when we're talking about major balance changes, obviously, like, this was a major patch. This isn't like a mid-season one. So going in, outside of, obviously, everything going on with Invasion, you knew there was going to be a lot more heroes touch in this case. And sure enough, that remains true for the major balance changes here.
Yeah, I mean, this is kind of what a lot of people have been asking for, is like more season identity. And I don't think the tank changes are as significant as they probably could have been. But I will say the Winston change does make it a lot harder for him to snipe people out. Just because of that recovery time. Like 0.25 doesn't sound like a lot, but it does affect like the general flow of things. And the other tanks, getting some changes, specifically Orisa. Like Orisa's going to be the big one, because she can stand there with that extra 50 health while fortified. It basically just live forever. So, yeah, we'll see how this plays out a little bit, more as time goes on.
Absolutely. Moving on to the DPS, not as many, but still, some of the problem childs definitely got touched in this case. Just quickly scrolling through here. Bastion got a number of changes to his tactical grenade. So max explosion damage fallout reduced from 70% to 50%. The detonation time was also reduced from 0.5 to 0.35 seconds. Recoil adjusted to recover more quickly. Projectile size increased from 0.2 to 0.25, and the impact damage was increased. It doubled from 15 to 30. Recon reload time reduced from 1.5 to 1.2 seconds. And his assault transformation into configuration assault now repairs 50 armor health. Okay. Configuration artillery target and state movement speed increased from 20 to 25 meters per second. So that would be his,
back, baby.
That's his alt.
Yeah. Assault is current, artillery is the ultimate.
That's okay. Cassidy, another big thing here. Base health increased from 200 to 225, and that's obviously because they touched on his other part of his kit. Peacekeeper damage fall off range rescaled from 25 to 45 meters to 25 to 35 meters. And it touched the magnetic grenade. Projectile now has a max travel time of 1.5 seconds. This amount reduced from 30 to 25%. Hanzo Storm Bow arrow draw progress is no longer preserved while wall climbing.
This is bullshit. This is the only change I'm mad about.
I even as someone who is absolute dog shit at this hero, I don't blame you.
This completely neuters his poke play style.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not saying it's unjustified. Look, I get it. I hate it as much as you do, even as an avid Hanzo player, of like just running down the hallway and then a Hanzo hops over a wall and just headshots me. But this is a big nerf to Hanzo for most people. So I mean, they mentioned it, like it's frustrating to play against a Hanzo climbing the wall and just taking pot shots, because he's basically invincible at that point, unless you're like another Hanzo or a Widowmaker that can one tap him. He just falls behind the wall and then gets healed and then does the same thing again. But yeah, when I read this, I was so mad, because I'm like, dude, what are you guys doing? Like, Hanzo has been able to do this for like 7 years, and now you change this?
Yep. Oh well.
Oh well.
But now we got Soldier Helix or Rocket Explosion damage reduced from 90 to 80. Then he increased the alt cost for his tac visor by 10%. Sombra, which, side note really quick, the rework is next season.
Yep.
That was confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
They touched EMP, so the alt cost was increased by 15%, and it no longer destroys the Life Weavers to real life. More on that in just a bit, because again, Life Weaver saw a number of changes,
Correct.
which, at this point in time, it's like, obviously, like, we've seen this literally every single patch since
Mm-hmm.
Life Weaver came out, so will this be it? Remains to be seen. But yeah, Torbjorn, weapons swap time reduced from 0.5 to 0.4 seconds. Good, we can get our hammer out a little bit quicker when we're doing our 1v1s.
Mm-hmm.
River gun primary fire recovery time reduced from 0.55 to 0.48 seconds. Kind of an odd adjustment there, at least with the interval. It's like, okay. And then the forge hammer screen recovery time reduced from 0.75 to 0.6 seconds. See, that makes sense to me. Going 0.05, point 0.15 as opposed to just an odd number.
Mm-hmm.
Like, who in the office is like, all right, we're just gonna do like 0.7, because it's always either like a half or a full number.
I bet you if they did it like down to like 0.45, something breaks. Like I bet you there's some odd break point there that, like, if you're mercy damage boosting, even with the change we're going to talk about, like he can like 3-tap a hero before they can even have a chance to respond. Like there's got to be like some kind of weird break point that they made that, because I can't imagine it's like a damage related break point. It's got to be like some weird interaction somewhere that we don't know about, that if they just put it down a little bit further, something weird happens. Because I read that too, and I was like, why that? Like, why not just bring it down to like 0.45 or even 0.5? Like, yeah, so they wanted to buff him as much as they could in that ability, but if they went any lower, something else breaks. Like Reaper suddenly can teleport to the enemy team spawn. Like something weird, like off the wall like that. So who knows? But yeah, the hammer change is cool because you can just swing the hammer slightly faster. So
That's all you need with Torbjorn.
yeah, I didn't even know he had a gun.
Fair point. Support changes. Antibiotic rifle damage and healing per projectile reduced from 75 to 70. An unscoped projectile size increase from 0 to 0.1. All right, I might actually be able to hit something.
But it's not as good anymore. So
yeah, it's just not as good. So it's still going to be less effective. So feels bad. Brigida,
I think Anna needed a nerf.
Yeah, she's definitely been probably the safest hero pick across the board, regardless of role, to be honest, at this point in time. Brig, barrier shield, health reduced from 300 to 250. Oh, man, she can no longer be our shield. And Rally alt cost increased by 6%. Kiriko, looking at the protection, Suzu knockback removed. Healing reduced from 50 to 40. And also now heals for an additional 30 health when cleansing a negative effect. And then the kunai, damage decreased from 40 to 45. Recovery time reduced from 0.55 to 0.5 seconds. And crit damage multiplier reduced from 3 to 2.5. And Life Weaver, again. Sweeping changes.
Womp womp.
Base health reduced from 200 to 175, but they gave him 50 shield health in place of that. Thorn Valley reduced spread from 1 to 2 Thorn Valley projectiles fired per shot by 25%. They doubled their rejuvenate and dash from 25 to 50 healing. Life grip mobility and lockout duration increased from 0.45 to 0.75 seconds. Then history of life, 50% of the overhealing is now converted into overhealth, up to 100 max overhealth. Lucio, crossblade self-healing penalty is now reduced from 60 to 0% for the duration of Amp It Up. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Mercy, and this, this across the board, has probably been one of the hotter topics by the community. Damage
Go
boost
figure.
in Overwatch. It's always something dealing with Mercy. because she's kind of like a popular pick.
Yep.
A secondary fire damage boost reduced from 30% to 25%.
I think it needed to happen.
Yep.
Same with Zenyatta. So
Hmm.
overall, like I really like all the support changes. Like Ana is my most played hero, and I agree. She was the safest support pick. She could just do everything really well, and for most levels, no team's going to be able to pull off a coordinated dive enough to threaten her if you're playing far back enough. The Obviously Brig needed changes because Brig was also OP. Here's the thing I learned: I didn't know Suzu healed. I thought Suzu only cleansed. I knew about the knockback, but I didn't realize that it healed as well. Um,
Hmm.
so yeah, that probably needed to change because again, I feel like Suzu was doing a little bit too much. Now healing while cleansing, I think is a good gameplay loop. Like I think you're being rewarded for using it correctly. But I am sad about her damage because it definitely makes the flank Kiriko harder to pull off. Because that damage multiplier was doing a lot of work there. If you could two tap some people, so Lifeweaver, I will say that again, this wasn't in standard format. This was in the Flashpoint no roll lock, so the tanks were weaker. But Lifeweaver was much harder to kill, at least from what I noticed. So maybe this is enough to at least not make him terrible. I still feel like the new support just shits on him regardless, with all that she can do. The Lucio changes are really good, but they are super annoying because we did run against a really good Lucio, and he was impossible to kill because as soon as he felt threatened, he would amp it up and just right away. And he was getting so much healing from that amp it up that unless you were landing like headshots, there was nothing we could do. So, yeah, it's I think everything is good. I'm curious to see what this means for the meta. I honestly think the new support is going to play the most changes. And after playing her for a few games, I don't know where she's going to fall. But in terms of just like the general things,
Hmm.
I think they're all really good hero changes. I will say before we circle back and go through some of the other stuff, they do mention that in co-op game modes, um, the ultimates cost more and you don't get passive alt charge. And let me tell you, I never realized how important passive alt charge was until I was playing those PvE missions today. And I was like, dude, it is taking forever to get a pulse bomb as Tracer. And then I was like, oh, right, we're just sitting here, people talking, and I'm not getting alt charge. So, yeah, I don't know. There are specific PvE changes too. I don't know if you want to go through all of them,
No, no,
but
I wouldn't
they are
bother.
enough that you should pay attention to them because they do fundamentally change how some characters play. Like Winston, like the first one I'll just say because it's right there on the screen, is the secondary fire chains up to multiple people. Like it's like literally chain lightning. So don't feel like you should be ignoring that when you're playing Winston in PvE. But yeah, definitely check out the PvE changes because they do affect how all these characters play.
Absolutely. So just circling back to some of the general updates for this patch as well. Uh, as you had mentioned, we do have the new game mode, which is Flashpoint. Which we'll see that when the Overwatch League returns. So really
Mm-hmm.
curious to see how that's going to play at the pro level. Uh, but again, like for the longest time, we've always kind of talked about like, well, how would a conquest map type work in the world of Overwatch? This one is a little bit more different. Yes, it's kind of like Control, but there's also just movement components to this. And fortunately, I've not been able to check out Flashpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And really, the only thing outside of obviously the PVE missions that I did today was I loaded into the new practice range,
Woo.
which has like the whole new target practice
Mm-hmm.
in one of the part of the maps. And initially, I'm like, okay, well, where the hell is this thing? It took me a couple of minutes to find it. I eventually did find it. So I thought it was interesting that it's like there was like I don't know if it was like a challenge or like an achievement or whatever, just to go in there and
Oh,
like
I haven't
run
been in
the
there yet.
practice range. So I messed around with the new hero on that really quick. So that was my only new like play so far with the new hero, just to see what exactly she does. And I'm excited to play her in like a traditional format in this case. But yeah, we got a new PvP mode, so you can kind of get the gist of how that works. And obviously the big thing is there are 5 flash points in total, and you gotta capture 3 of them to actually win the match.
Mm-hmm.
And you can play it in unranked mode, and it will be available in competitive just later on. They're not just gonna throw you in the deep end. Very similar to like what they would do with like a new hero release, for example. Outside of that, we also do have a new limited time event going on, which is based in Kane's Road. This is Underworld. I did not have an opportunity to check this one out. And, like we were obviously running the PvE missions. So, we ran a little bit longer for the pre-show. So, we didn't really like feel the need to run the LTE in this case, just because it's kind of its own thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what I thought was interesting, at least like when you log into the game, is, obviously they're highlighted the PvE missions, and then right below that, there was a clickable thing to just like jump right into the limited time event. So it's not like a separate, like, okay, we're going to go into like arcade and then find it through there. It's just literally right there on the main screen. So at least just for quality of life or just accessibility, I thought that was really smart of them to do. And I wouldn't say like the main screen feels extremely bloated, which is also a good thing in this case as well. But again, this is also dealing with the null sector, and they'll be adding some new co-op events for this. So definitely go check that out. But this is going on August 10th until September 5th. But yeah, outside of that, as I mentioned, we got the new firing range, which has that's in the practice range, and they have like all different like target sizes in regards to the shooting range in this case. So just a way outside of doing like these workshop modes, which a lot of those have been absolutely fantastic for target practice. But just having something within game and not having to find like an outside source to be able to do something like this is obviously in the long run going to be better for just the game community as a whole. And obviously we got new challenges, we got the new progression system as well. Didn't really have too much time to like look into that. And if you're wondering if the PvE missions count towards that, no, they do not, outside of time played, which we learned earlier today. I don't know. I don't think they touched up on the progression system in the notes.
Not much. So,
but that was basically the gist of it, outside of obviously the PvE stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on, so the notes were long enough as they are, especially incorporating 2 game modes into it. So, at the end of the day, yeah, I mean, they did give you like the general map updates. There's 2 new Flashpoint maps. I've played both of them. They're both okay. I obviously I don't have enough to form an opinion on them yet. So we will see. We do have Blizzard World at night, which I am really curious about because Blizzard World, is it winter? I think it's Winter Wonderland is also at night, and that map looks phenomenal. So I am excited to see how that goes. We also have Antarctic Peninsula at night, which I'm curious to see how that one goes, because that could make that like my biggest problem with that map, other than some of the layouts, is like the sun was just so blinding. Like you would come around a corner and you're like, shit, where's the team? I can't see anything. Like it's almost like the same problem Gibraltar has when you're defending
I definitely have
during the day. So But overall, we got some bug fixes and stuff like that. So I'll wait a week and we'll find out what Flats and his team come up with for new bugs, because
Hmm.
him and Marbler always tend to find something random. But like I said, they're all good fixes. They did change some of the reward progression. Like, you can actually earn Overwatch coins now through one of the weekly challenges rather than Battle Pass experience. But with that, they also upped the number of challenges you need weekly to get Overwatch coins by one on the second and third tiers. So, something to keep in mind. I'm still not happy with the reward structure, but I am happy they are at least iterating on it. So that gives me hope that someday they will get out of Bobby Kotick's ass and actually give us a decent monetized structure. Um, so, but yeah, it's hard to give like a full, like, oh, this is how I think of the meta, because A, I haven't played a whole lot of PvP, and B, there were so much touched that it's gonna take weeks, if not a couple of months, till the mid season before we kind of nail down a meta. So we'll see.
Right,
But
and it's also just the fact that on top of that, normally we're not having Thursday patches like day of
yes,
show.
yeah,
It's
normally I get a
normally
couple
on
of
the
days to
Tuesday.
play with it. So
So that's the other thing, kind of throwing us for a loop in this case. But again, biggest match of the day for Overwatch. So I can't say I'm too surprised by it. And obviously, like, we knew it was going to drop on a Thursday. It was just like, all right, man. It's like I gotta get off work. I need to hop on after I grab
mhm.
dinner, and then we're just like, well, I can't just like do the podcast and like not do the PvE missions. We got to run through this
Yeah,
shit. And sure enough, we did. So again, that cut into like me actually playing the new hero in a respectable manner. So we
sacrifices
have
had to be made.
yeah, yeah. So we have Iari, who is the new support hero, and go during our off period. There was kind of something that happened where something was accidentally leaked,
Hmm.
you know, and that
Yeah,
was
there
the
were a
whole
lot of leaks.
ordeal. And it's just like, as soon I didn't see the tweet or the post or whatever the hell they're calling it now. Besides the point. But I just remember like, oh yeah, uh, I remember seeing someone like had quote retweeted something. And they
Hmm.
were like, man, I'm surprised it came from this person in
Right.
particular, because it was like the president in this case. And I'm just like, remembering like, wait, what? What Overwatch 2 links? I was like, nope, nope, I'm not gonna look at him. I'm gonna wait. And I have to say, like, just going in, and even if I was just dicking around in the firing range, when I pulled out the ultimate, my eyes lit up like
Dude,
so
it's
much. I was
it's
so enamored by it.
it's so good. And it look, I can tell you that there's an easy way they can fix it, because right now the ultimate is busted. Like, if you watched the pre-show, you saw at one point I hit multiple people with the ultimate and they ran away, and I was able, cuz the way the ultimate works, I guess I should explain that, is you shoot a thing down and it basically like hits people in an area, and it like puts like sun globes on them, and then you have to shoot them to explode those sun globes. But they can explode other sun globes if you explode one. So what literally happened was I hit like 3 people, and the Ash was a little too slow getting around the corner away from me while she had that sun globe, and I shot her and hit her with a headshot, and that was enough to um, detonate it. And she literally chain reaction killed the other 2 people in, behind the barrier. So the other 2 people thought they were safe, and you just see like boom, and then I hear dink dink, and I see on the kill feed I've killed 3 people. So
Oh yeah.
the and it lasts a long time, because I also had it shot on me, and I backed away and I thought I was good, um, and then I came back, and then I got shot and it exploded and I died. So uh, I feel like that timing's going to need to be adjusted because it is really good and it does a lot of damage. Like it is a one shot effectively um, for any 200 HP hero, as long as I guess I'd have to look at the actual damage numbers to know if it's a true one shot, but it felt like a one shot for any 200 HP hero. And her actual like primary fire is weird, but if it's fully charged up and you land a headshot, that's like 50%. That's like 100 damage almost. It and so while you can't do that back to back because the way her primary fire works is it works on like a, I want to say it's almost like a charge system where it shoots and then you have to let it charge up to max damage again. So like if you pound the fire button, you're doing less damage, but you're shooting faster. So if you want like those big hits, in the way I saw ML7 playing her is he was literally like healing and then he would take a shot, heal, take a shot. So it's almost like that old Baptiste rhythm before, you know, you could just hammer down both buttons at the same time and be an amazing Baptiste. So like you get into that rhythm of like healing and stuff like that. But her healing output is really good when she has the resource for it. At least it felt really good. Like obviously I don't have the numbers because I haven't done enough testing on her, but just the secondary fire heals a lot, but that resource is very limited. So like if you're healing multiple people, you run out of that fast. So where a lot of your healing is coming from is that turret. And man, you can get creative with that turret because there was one point on a Flashpoint map where it's very similar to Antarctica, or I guess Oasis, where you have that bridge over top of you. Where this point actually the bridge goes all the way across. So like there's literally a bridge on the top and then the point is down at the bottom. Literally on the bottom of that bridge is like a bowl, and I literally stuck the turret to the top of that. So in order to shoot the turret, you had to be like on the point shooting up at it. But that turret would hit anybody on my team on that point and it would just heal them. So she is incredibly good, at least from what I've seen. So they did not Lifeweaver her at all. So
Yeah.
I am excited to
They
play
learned their
more.
mistake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She, and like I said, she is very aim focused. Like if you want to be doing damage, you have to have good aim with her. Like even I don't have like amazing aim, but I have decent aim, and I was struggling to land shots until I kind of got the feel for it. But like she can do a lot of work. The only thing I haven't gotten used to is she also has like a dash jump. It's like the twirly spinny sun thing you see in the trailer. There is, no matter what you do, there is a lot of vertical lift to that. So like in the trailer they make it seem like she just like echoed her way across a gap, like she spins across the gap Super Mario style. I haven't quite figured out how to do that. Like no matter what I do, it's always like a 45-degree angle.
Yeah.
So that could be user error, like maybe I'm missing, or maybe there's a setting like echo, like you know how you can control your dash, either it's hold or you know stuff like that. So I have to dig a little more into that. But she seems good, man. Like I am not disappointed. Like this is like the support I've been waiting for, because I can be like I'm healing the team, but really I'm killing the enemy team. So we'll see.
Yeah, so general gist for the toolkit, you know, you have your solar rifle. So your primary fire is the long range auto charging rifle, which you know you mentioned. You know you could fire quick or you could charge it up to do more damage. Your secondary fire, your ult, like, is your healing beam, all of which consumes solar energy. You have outburst, which is the dash ability, which also is able to knock back enemies. I obviously I haven't played it in game, so like I can't say like how useful that aspect of it is. But yes, I was also messing around with it, and you know on toolkit or whatever it says, oh yeah, like, you know you can hold jump to go higher. So it's like, okay, well let me see if it changes like the trajectory of like where I'm actually going. And you know, as you mentioned, like it did feel like it was just 45%, no matter what I was doing, whether I was just hitting shift or doing the shift also with the space jump.
Yeah.
So yeah, I got more movement out of it by actually holding the jump, but it still felt like it was still even kill in regards to the angle overall. We do have the healing pylon, which you mentioned. So basically a healing turret, which is fantastic.
Yep.
Which, like, definitely been a few of us who have been waiting for an ability like that. So happy to see some community suggestions that actually make it into the game. In this case, but yeah, the ultimate was really what sold me when I saw that. The captive sod just phenomenal. So it's just a giant ball of fire.
Yep.
Fantastic, and it's enemies that are hit by it are slowed, and then they also explode after taking some significant damage. But yeah, so as soon as I saw that, I was like, oh man, like this is it. And obviously, as someone who has played Pharah for forever and Quake long before Overwatch, when I saw that come out, I was like, now we're fucking talking.
Yep.
Like,
yeah.
so yeah, needless to say, like that was the thing that I'm like, all right, this is it.
Yeah, I want to dig into her a little more because there's a lot of nuance to her. I will say that while I don't know the fall off on her primary fire, it seems like it's pretty far. If there is any fall off. I will say the right click healing is not far at all. It's definitely much closer than you think. So she needs to be a little more aggressive, and I think that's kind of how they tried to balance her out. Because there were multiple times like I had to put myself in bad positions in order to heal people, and depending on what the other healer was, I could make concessions like, okay, the other healer's a Moira, they can stand up there, and I'll stay back here and I'll heal the Moira, and the Moira will heal the team. Or like I'll put a turret up somewhere, and then, you know, just snipe people from the back. Because the other thing that I noticed, and this isn't really mentioned anywhere that I saw, but I could have missed it, is if you throw the turret out, the turret can heal. If it's not destroyed, you can cancel the turret and immediately redeploy it. Unlike Torbjorn's turret or Symmetra's turret where there's like a cooldown. Now, if it is destroyed, then you have to wait a cooldown period before you can throw it back out. But like, if it's just like healing people and not taking damage, you can literally just call it back and send it back out somewhere else. So that is something to think about. But yeah, I want to play her more because she seems like a lot of fun.
Yep. Now, obviously, the big thing here is the launch of the story mission, so we get our first taste of PvE. And, very interesting way of accessing it in-game, I thought. So basically, we are at Winston's desk in this case. So, we kind of like... we see like the computer set up, the middle area is how you access the missions. And then you could get map specific lore based on the missions with the right hand part of the display. And then the left hand side is hero specific, which you'll unlock by actually doing the PvE missions as well. And I know you digged into that a little bit more than I did earlier today. But, again, to access PvE, you do have to buy the missions. Not able to buy it with in-game currency. It is $14.99 for the base version. Obviously, like they try to entice you with battle pass incentives as well. If you want to spend, I think the other one was like $34.99.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken, I just did the bare bones just because obviously okay, I just want to see the missions. And not just throw my wallet at the screen, because I got other shit to save up for, because I got vendor events coming up besides the point. But really, we have 3 missions, $15. All said and done, obviously, we ran through them on normal. There are 4 difficulties, I want to say, in this case.
Yep.
And you do have to play them in order. So you can't just like randomly start at the end, which makes sense because like you're getting the band back together, so it kind of makes
There is a
sense.
progression to it for sure.
Yeah, yeah, with the way that everything is laid out. But even on normal, uh, we ran into a little bit of an issue on the second map,
Yeah.
with primarily our DPS, or lack thereof, for that matter.
Yeah.
So much to the point where it took us 3 attempts to deal with the brain suckers because they
Yep.
kept killing the NPCs, and we're like, oh. And you're just like, oh, I'm just gonna stay on this side then, and then sure enough, on that second attempt, the DPS couldn't handle for whatever reason. But then we run into the situation of, okay, one of the players left, and it's like, okay, well, what's going to happen here? Okay, they're going to slot in an AI for us, and it was a Genji. We're like, all right, let's see which bot wins. Is it going to be, the long-standing bots that have been in the game really since Overwatch, who also were very telegraphed, much like the story mission bots in this case as well.
Mhm.
And I would say for the most part, our AI Genji did okay. Wasn't really feeding,
Nope.
which was good. Couldn't say that for our DPS.
No.
But always got to factor in human error with these sort of things. But, again, this is brand new. You can absolutely tell that people have not hopped in and played these missions before because some of them were just nowhere near the objective at times.
Nope.
But I think for me, and this isn't like mission specific, but going in, I thought it was very interesting that it gave you the option to skip the cinematic part for the missions, even on a first-time playthrough. That has not been something that Team 4 has done before.
Nope.
So I thought that was interesting, especially knowing just the fact that, like, oh yeah, this isn't just like a free part of the content that is coming out.
Right.
So to see something paywalled with still having an option, I thought was very intriguing to me, just because it is something a little bit different in that regard. But obviously, like, now that we've seen it, there's obviously incentive for us to just skip it every time. But you basically watch a cinematic, and then it will put you in the queue. The queue took 2 or 3 seconds before throwing us in the game. So will a queue times be an issue down the road? We'll find out. But the biggest question is, what is the replayability factor for the PvE missions? And we've ran through it once.
I ran through it twice.
Yeah, and my first playthrough, honestly, I was not expecting it to take as long as it did. I wasn't expecting us to fail 3 times in the second mission. But I would say they're supposed to be like 15 minutes.
Yeah, 15 to 20 minutes is about right.
Yeah. But obviously, we played the initial version at BlizzCon when it was first unveiled, which was very different compared to this one.
They made some changes.
Obviously because of the talent builds were a thing back then, and since then that was scrapped. Bittersweet feelings about that, obviously, because it's not what we were promised. But yeah, obviously, I want to go through. I want to play the different heroes. I want to access more of the lore to see like what sort of tidbits we get in there. But again, the biggest thing for me is specifically with the lore, having the access to it within the game is always the direction that I am going to prefer.
Sure.
So to see how they were handling it, I was very happy with it. But it's very hard for me to sit here and be like, oh yeah, I'm definitely gonna go back and replay every difficulty. I'm probably not gonna do that, but I will go back. I'll play it over again, try out the different heroes. I was kind of stuck in support jail until the Torbjorn map.
Yeah, Gothenburg.
Yeah, which is fine. But I will say, like, with that mission in particular, and know what you had mentioned about Iyari with her healing turret,
Mm-hmm.
knowing that, like with the Torbjorn map, it's like, oh yeah, like you can like move the turrets around. And it's like,
Yeah.
oh, that's good preparation for the new hero. So like, there's a nice connection there.
It was pretty cool. Like I actually liked all three of the missions. I think they're different enough that they don't feel like, because my biggest worry going in is I felt like they were all going to be very archives ish, and they
Hmm.
are to a point. But the objectives are different enough, and the things you are fighting have different enough tactics that I do feel like they kind of stand on their own. Is it enough? That's a debate for another time. Um,
Yeah.
but I will say that I enjoyed all three of the missions. I do want to replay them to get the individual lore, because basically, whenever you play a mission, you have a certain amount of heroes that you can select, and every hero that you play for that mission unlocks a lore entry for that hero for that mission. So, like, characters like Reinhardt, who are available for all missions, have, you know, 6 lore entries or whatever, 7 or whatever it ends up being. Whereas characters like Farah, who is only available for one mission, only has like 3 lore entries. So you can kind of get through it and see the different entries, and depending on what the entry is. Like, I played Diva, and Diva's entry is her talking to Dehun from the cinematic, and they go back and forth about what's happening and stuff. And while it's not any like groundbreaking lore, you do get a little insight into like their relationship and like what is going on in Korea and stuff like that. Like, I played Echo, and you get some nice lore on Echo and how she's feeling about it, and stuff like that. So I think this is all really cool stuff, and this is the stuff, like, honestly, we've been waiting for like 6 years for, because this
Hmm.
this is expanding the world now in game in a like very organic way. Because the other side to that is you also get like email messages and stuff that aren't character specific but mission specific, and I would highly recommend you reading those through, because like one of them is like a threat from the UN to Winston, like, hey, we see what you're doing, don't do it, or you're gonna make an enemy out of us, because you're not allowed to be doing it. So like there are like hints to future things, and they mention like Soldier 76 is chasing ghosts, so clearly that's gonna come up. Like, I don't want to talk about like the cliffhanger ending, because it is the first day, and I don't want to spoil everything. But they do set up what is happening, and they finally gave us some Zenyatta lore. I do find that really interesting. Like, we'll have to talk about that at some point, because that it like changed Zenyatta for me fundamentally after I watched that. So I I'm curious to see where they go with it. I hope it doesn't take them as long as they say it is, and I hope the next iteration is more than 3 missions, because the 3 missions were really good. Like, I don't want to like oversell it too much, but I was going in, Debbie Downer. Like, we have been pretty down on Overwatch recently, and this doesn't excuse them. This doesn't fix the problems, but if they can deliver this type of content more regularly moving forward, I think it will help Overwatch significantly. Is it enough to save Overwatch? I don't know, but I am enjoying it for the first time in a long time. I can tell you that I want to go back and play the PvE missions. And I can tell you that I haven't felt that way about Overwatch 2 since season 3. I've literally just logged in, done my dailies, and logged out. Like, it was almost like a chore to me. Um,
Hmm.
so uh, it's good. I just hope we get more of it sooner rather than later.
Yeah, which is obviously like the big thing because like
Right.
again, there was a lot of talk like, oh yeah, well like okay, well like when's the next slate supposed to come out? And they made it pretty clear like we're really not expecting another release this year. Uh, so it's like all right, well like how much further down the line? Um, so when we're talking about the roadmap or just like the release cycle of content for the game, obviously like we've kind of been accustomed to this point in time. We're at season 6 at this point. We're going through like, okay, we got a new hero, we got a new map, and we're just alternating between the two. Now, if I'm on Team 4 and I'm looking at how we're cycling new content into the game, there have definitely been seasons where they're like, all right, we're just gonna try some shit, and honestly, like those seasons to me have been the ones that have stuck out the most.
Yep.
And I'll use like the Lovercraft season,
Yeah,
or Loverwatch for the prime example of this. I was absolutely floored by that because going in, I was like, okay, this sounds interesting, but like I don't play these dating simulators, so like when they announced
awfully accusatory.
when when they announced it, I'm just like, all right, like, well, like, I guess. But like I knew there was a market for that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, like, there's that whole ordeal with like Dream Daddy when that came out, and that was a huge deal with a lot of the streamers.
Yep.
And that was like a whole ordeal, and I know there have been other ones since then. But I'm just like, all right, well, it's like, all right, obviously it's something different. We'll see how they implement it. And again, in this case, this was implemented outside of the game. So we've gotten both sides of the coin on that front.
Yep.
With that, but just playing through it and seeing what tidbits, seeing like the inside jokes and whatnot, really helped my perspective on that. Where I'm just like, man, like this is honestly like completely caught me off guard. That I enjoyed it as much as I did. So for me though, if we're talking about like a season that outside of the new hero seasons, like the ones that are map specific, those are the ones that always feel like, all right, they're just kind of there. Like they need to be bolstered up. So if I'm on Team 4, I'm looking at those seasons to really implement the new batch of the PvE content out there. Now, I doubt we are going to be in a position where they're going to be like, oh yeah, like this is how many players have played the hero missions.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because at the end of the day, money is a factor. And regardless of how you feel about the monetization of the game, it is a necessary evil in order to, prolong production of content for the game.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to say, like, okay, if we are waiting another 5-6 months at this point, or however long it's going to end up being, well, let's see, it's August, so we're talking minimum 4 months at this point in time before, or probably 5, before we do see the next one. It's just like, all right, and they keep saying like, yeah, like obviously like we have the stuff in production, we are pretty far along, but it's like, yeah, that's great, you guys are telling us this, but we're still having to wait 4 to 6 months in order for like the next batch of missions. So I don't want it just to be like, okay, just to be like a sprinkle effect. It's like, here's 3 missions. Here's 3 missions. Oh, that's another $15. So I want to see what their plan is for the rollout, because that's obviously going to be like the biggest thing. We need that sort of consistency. We need that reason to come back. Not just for lore specific reasons, but just because like the PvE was going to be a major thing to draw people in, because that was supposed to be Overwatch 2's identity. That made it Overwatch 2. And if we don't have the full-fledged picture, which, is the case, with the PvE rollout that they did implement, we need to entice the players to, constantly give them a reason to play the game.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see what happens. Like, I think like later down the line, like they'll do more of like a bundle for the PvE content where, it just won't be the 3, they'll like bundle a couple of seasons together or whatever.
For sure.
So I'm just seeing like what they're going to do on that front, what sort of discount is going to be involved with that. But overall, first impressions for the PvE content, I would say, yeah, I had a great time today for the pre-stream stream.
Yeah.
Uh, but granted, a couple hiccups along the way, but a fun time nonetheless. But yeah, it's just like, is it going to be the saving grace for Overwatch 2? Obviously, it's day one. It's
Yep.
too early to tell. But I think there's enough here for us to have like a general understanding of what we can sort of expect in the future. But it's just, we've been through droughts of content.
Mm-hmm.
And if this is supposed to be the thing that keeps players here, like we can't be going through these 4-month cycles of like,
Nope.
all right, well, like here, next season you can have a map. It's just like, we're just like, it's like nibble size of content. Like we need to have like that constant flow because, we're in a live service market. Like we see what the competition is doing.
Yep.
And you need to be able to at least match what the other competitors are doing. And like right now, it's like, yeah, it's great that we had the biggest content drop that we have had to date. But like these next few months, like what are they going to do to bring the players back? Like, are they going to do more off the wall stuff? Like, as I mentioned, like with Overwatch, which was fantastic. Or are we going to get something like God, what was the last one? Magic and Missiles or whatever the hell they called it, which was just like
magic.
Yeah, Mischief and Magic. I completely butchered the name. I get that, but just the way that they like set that up,
yeah,
was just so off kilter, and it's just it was just a bad way to implement it. Where it's just like, wait, you're telling me I basically have to complete the battle pass in order to like actually see this specific limited time event mode through?
Yeah,
it's like, come on, man, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, and I will say that like, Destiny seasons are 10 weeks long, so Destiny gets like re-injected with a lot of content at about the same rate that Overwatch gets new seasons, because Overwatch seasons are 9 weeks long. So while Destiny is a very different game and they have a much larger team, I think it's not unreasonable to expect new story missions if we're only getting 3 at a time every season. Like, I don't think that's unreasonable. Now, I can understand maybe this time they want to take a little bit of extra lead time to, iterate on the next missions, but I've already made my point clear on that. Of that's a stupid idea anyway. Like you put the next missions out next season and then you iterate on the following season based on feedback, because regardless of what type of content you're putting out, people will generally be more happier as long as that content works if the content is in their hands. You're just creating more problems by pushing it back. So we'll see what they come back with. Like if they come out with like, this has been like the most people that have logged into Overwatch ever, since it launched, I cannot imagine Bobby in his golden toilet sitting there being like, no, push back the PvE missions because we want to iterate on feedback. No, he's going to be like, here's the feedback, put out more fucking missions so I can buy my 3rd golden toilet, kind of thing. So we'll see how it goes. Like I said, my initial impressions are positive on the missions. And while it doesn't take away the burn from missing hero missions, I will say that the limited time mode, the Underworld event, is going to change week to week. At least that's currently the way it looks like.
Yep.
So if that can be what I think it is going to be, that might be enough to keep people around. It's almost like hero missions light, like hero missions without the progression, which again just makes it the way they sold it really terrible, because they could have led with something like that. They'd be like, look, we had to scrap progression system, but we're still implementing hero missions, and you'll have new stuff to do every week throughout the season, for like the first 5 weeks of the season. Because looking at the locked section, there are 5 or 6, I can't remember, of like locks, which actually really funny lines up exactly how Destiny does their content. Is they get like story missions for the first 6 weeks, and then after that the story for that season is done, and then you just unlock challenges after that. So like after that, fundamentally nothing changes about that season. You've unlocked everything and gone through the story mission, and then you have the rest of the season to play out in that sandbox. This seems similar to that. So if that's the case, that might be enough to entice enough people to stick around, because there is a vast majority of Overwatch's audience and a vast majority of people who have never played Overwatch that could be drawn in to play a PvE mission every now and then, that have no interest in PvP. And if this is iterated on enough, and it is well enough, I think they could do that. I don't think it's there yet, because I did play the mission available now, and it is even more of an archives mission than the story missions. But I think it could get there, absolutely.
Right on. Just taking a quick look at the roadmap. We do have the Overwatch 2 anniversary event coming up next month. But if you miss any of the limited time events, they will be returning for this on a week-to-week basis. So whether it's Battle for Olympus, Star Watch, or how I fumbled earlier with with the Mischief and Magic, you can go back and revisit that. I don't know if you want to go back and revisit Mischief and Magic, but to each their own. But yeah, that was basically just a bit, and we also still have the Hero Mastery coming, where you can test your skills and climb the leaderboard on that front. And, we'll see what sort of crazy shenanigans are involved in that, because that's basically just going to be like a glorified workshop mode, if the image is any indicator of that. But yeah, so got a first taste of PvE. Obviously, you can check out the new bundles. Obviously, there's new stuff in the shop with that as well. Both, skin specific or just invasion bundles across the board. But yeah, all in all, season 6, a lot of content coming in here. Looking forward to diving in and playing the non-PvE stuff to kind of see like where everything's fallen in that regard, just because there were sweeping changes across the board for the heroes. But yeah, that's basically it for the patch. It was a lot of stuff to go over.
Yep.
But again, if you haven't yet, go check out the balance changes. If you're curious to see like what hero tweaks there were for PvE, all that stuff is also in the balance changes as well. But just looking forward to seeing other tidbits with the lore involved with the other heroes for the missions. But if I were to guess, I'm not going to sit here and say, like, I feel enticed enough to, like, sit down and play literally every hero for the missions to unlock every little tidbit in regards to the lore.
There'll be a YouTube video for that shit.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure, which would be a lot quicker than, doing 15-minute missions on, God, I don't know how many heroes there are at this point for these.
Hey,
I don't look at that.
The last mission is the easiest, because it is only 4 heroes available. So
that is true.
The hardest part about that mission is going to be getting that one hero you haven't played yet, because that hero is going to be insta-locked every time you try to play him.
Basically.
But I will say the only disappointment I had is that that underworld mission, that limited time mission, you're also hero locked. Like, you only have a limited selection of heroes for it. So I was a little sad about that, because I was like, oh, I'm gonna play this one, and then I'll test out the new hero in this PvE mode before I jump into PvP. And then I get in there and it's like, your hero can be Baptiste or Lucio, and I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'll play Tracer. So that was a little disappointing, but yeah, we'll see how it plays out.
All right. With that being said, obviously we got off to a late start, and it is very late for you. So let's go ahead and wrap
Yes.
things up for tonight. So again, best way to keep in contact with us is you can reach us over on Twitter at HND Overwatch. You can also find our video content on YouTube, Overwatch League Network, or you can search HND Overwatch. We are available to reach on Discord as well at discord.me/OWLN show. Outside of that, you can also reach all of us on social media on Twitter. You can find Ramses at Ramses_GG. You can find myself at Tumblely Drunk. And Spyder, where can our listeners reach you?
You can find me on Threads and on Twitter, Zitter, whatever the hell it is now, X, at _Spyder Gaming.
All right, and with that being said, we will be. I'm sure we'll be back in 2 weeks. We got the Overwatch League back in that case, and we'll see what sort of shenanigans will be involved with Yari on that front, and see if anyone has a Dallas Fuel effect with Brigitte.
Woo!
Back in the day. I don't know if we'll see anything to that regard, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of crazy shit going on with turrets and just that ultimate if nothing changes at that point in time. But that will do it for us here tonight on Heroes Never Die. Again, I've been your host, Simply Drunk, joined as always by my co-host Spyder. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. Enjoy the PvE content, and let us know what you guys think of it. I'm curious to hear everyone's thoughts, just because this has kind of been the moment that we've been waiting for. So, I know we're all hoping for the best at this point in time.
Good night.
See ya.